item with Mary is going to discuss some items from the legal department, legal perspective. We can go ahead and let you get started, Mary, if you'd like. And then I'll go over the agenda when she's finished. Excuse me, Mary, is your mic on?
There we go. Is that better? Excellent. I'll start again. We'll get this started off on the right, but eventually. I said, Madam Chair, Commissioners, again, my name is Mary Grant. I'm the attorney that's been supporting Historic Preservation Commission from the City Attorney's Office. And maybe before I get started, I just wanted to take a quick opportunity to introduce and let you all know, as far as my colleague, I'm going to just go like this. This is Ty Stoddard. He's going to be coming into these Historic Preservation Commission meetings, and eventually will be sitting in where I will be providing him backup. So wanted to give him an opportunity to introduce himself very quickly.
My name's Ty Stoddard. I started working with the city about 4 months ago, and I'm excited to work with y'all. And Mary's done a good job so far of onboarding me onto HPC, and I've watched some hearings and stuff. So I look forward to working with y'all.
So with regards to our presentation tonight, part of the purpose is, I think, for the benefit of some of our new commissioners, as well as Ty and anybody else who's interested, is to go over some of the authority of HPC, where that authority comes from, sort of the scope of that authority, and just review some of those legal bases, and then go over the legal process and some procedures. This is going to be a two-part training. Tonight, we'll just go over that Historic Preservation Commission authority and decisions and appeals. For next work session, that's likely when we will get to our due process issues and kind of the role that we as the city's legal department play in supporting the Historic Preservation Commission and then historic planning. So there are a few different sources for the authority for the Historic Preservation Commission. It starts really with the Constitution of Idaho, where we're granted as a city the police power, all such local police, sanitary, and other regulations as are not in conflict with our charter or with the general laws, we have the ability to regulate. There's also, so with that constitutional grant, and the whole quote unquote not in conflict with the charter, is generally speaking, we have to have some other statutory authority beyond that sort of general grant in the Constitution to exercise some regulatory authority. So for the preservation of historic sites, that comes specifically from Title 67, Chapter 46, where it authorizes local governing bodies to have comprehensive historic preservation programs, and that includes the establishment of a Historic Preservation Commission. So that's what provides the powers and duties of this commission. That's the means for which local governments can designate the historic districts, provides the procedure for how local governments are able to do that. And it's from that statutory authority where it requires the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness prior to any alteration, demolition, restoration, that type of thing in an area that is designated as a historic district or a property that is designated as a historic landmark. From the statutory authority granted by our Idaho code, we also have local ordinances. So under that authority, we have enacted several local ordinances. One is more broadly the historic preservation districts that kind of outlines and codifies the procedure that's outlined in the statutes, the Idaho statutes, and puts them into our local statutes. The main purpose is for the promotion, preservation, and protection of historic buildings, structures, sites, all of those types of things. And really to encourage that any new building as part of our comprehensive planning and city's growth will be harmonious with the existing historical neighborhood. With this Historic Preservation Commission, there are actually two different statutes that establish that. So one is 110205 and the other one is in Title 10, Chapter 5. And both of them outline what the scope and duties of the Historic Preservation Commission are. This is not an exhaustive list in terms of what is on this particular slide, but it does cover, generally speaking, what the scope and purview of this commission is there for. And it establishes the existence of the commission, provides for how many commissioners can be appointed, the length of their terms, those types of things. But in terms of scope and duty, I want to take a couple of minutes just to go over what that entails. This has been a question that has come up a few times, especially in the last few months, where it is within the scope and power of the Historic Preservation Commission to conduct a survey of local historic properties of the city. I will be the first to admit our code is not terribly clear on the procedure for how a Historic Preservation Commission may request a survey. But if that is something the commission were ever to be interested in, certainly something that legal could help in terms of defining the scope and how that might come about. Another is to recommend the lease, sale, transfer, disposition of historic property, participate in the conduct of land use, urban renewal, and other planning processes of the city. We'll go over some more of that intersection between planning and zoning commission, design review, some of those other processes in a few slides. This commission does have the ability to recommend ordinances or otherwise provide information for the purpose of historic preservation. So that is why things such as demolition ordinances, the amendment that came through not that long ago first came before the Historic Preservation Commission before then going on to other decision bodies for final approval. And then obviously where this commission most often acts is in the review of all development proposals within the historic district overlay and deciding those applications for certificates of appropriateness. Couple of other things that are outlined in our local ordinances as far as the scope and duties of the Historic Preservation Commission. Again, a question that has come up is reclassification. So oftentimes when the commission is deliberating over a particular application for a certificate of appropriateness, one of the bases is whether that property is a contributing or non-contributing property. And that certainly plays into the criteria that the commissioners use to decide whether or not to issue, approve, or deny that C of A. So with reclassification, that can come upon a motion of the commission, can come at the request of planning staff or the property owner. And it can be a reclassification either from non-contributing to a contributing status or the other way around, the contributing to non-contributing. There are criteria that the HPC needs to review to determine if it's appropriate for reclassification. And this is not an exhaustive list, but generally needs to be tied to one of these two criterias. That if it's not in request to, so let me pause here just for a second in this relation to requesting a new survey. This reclassification is generally as to a very specific property. So you're looking at the criteria for that particular, just that site. Whereas a survey would likely be broader in scope and would be brought before the commission or brought up by the commission for purposes of resurveying buildings, sites, structures in a particular area. So I want to make that sort of distinction. Where with a reclassification, a couple of things to keep in mind is that if it's not part of that broader survey, that you need to try to tie it back to errors in the original inventory as to why it might have been classified inappropriately, or in consideration of facts in the record, if there have been alterations, additions, or restorations that are of such a significant nature that it no longer has the attributes or characteristics of its current classification. And again, that can be either direction. So if there have been significant restorations, it may be an appropriate reclassification from non-contributing to contributing. More often than not, it's alterations or additions that take it out of the character of the historical era in which it was built. Also, as a side note on these reclassifications, as this has come up in consideration of particular applications, is that this is something that likely would need to occur prior to an application for a current certificate of appropriateness. An applicant, when they're coming forward requesting a certificate of appropriateness from the commission, is entitled to rely on the status of the ordinances and its status and classification at the time the application is made. It's kind of the idea of you don't get to change the rules of the game mid-game. And so if a property were to come before the commission and there's a desire for reclassification outside of a request from the property owner, it would be, behoove the commission to ensure that there is not already a pending application for certificate of appropriateness on that. A couple of other things within the scope and the duties of the Historic Preservation Commission are the designation of historic landmarks or a removal of that designation from a landmark that's already designated as historic. It does not come up as often. Also, the request for demolition or a request for a change in use for a historic property. And I want to talk a little bit about the Historic Preservation Commission's relation to broader planning. So, and I'm going to step back for just a second. Most of our local land use laws come from what is called the Local Land Use Planning Act, or LUPA. That is in a different title of Idaho statutes, but our local ordinances have tied the two together. So there are certain requirements that you would find in the LUPA statutes in Idaho code that are applicable to Historic Preservation Commission because of local law. So when I'm talking about a comprehensive plan, really we have the overall comprehensive plan that is put into place as part of our city requirements under LUPA. And that does not operate as controlling law, but it is a guide and advice to the government agencies responsible for making zoning decisions. And where this commission is not necessarily making zoning decisions, by our Boise City Code Title 11 Development Code, the criteria for this commission to consider is also whether or not a C of A is in compliance or in line with our comprehensive plan. Our local code also requires this commission to consider the design guidelines for residential historic districts. And this likely, I'm gonna make one other clarification with regards to that comprehensive plan. That this case law that's cited up there on the slide essentially says that you cannot deny an application solely on the basis that it fails to comply with the comprehensive plan. And that is because it is a guide and it is advice. It does not act as controlling law. So when you're looking at considerations and criteria for a C of A, there are several different things that the commission considers, like our urban renewal plans, our comprehensive plan, the residential guidelines for, or the historic guidelines for residential districts, those types of things, that if the commission were to look just at the comprehensive plan and make a decision based solely on its failure to comply with the comprehensive plan, that could be a problematic decision. So you'll want to tie it to more than one criteria in any circumstance that you're able. There is no actual case law that I can find. I'm not going to say there isn't any that exists out there in the state of Idaho, but it's they're not any Idaho Supreme Court cases that talk about the authority of the design guidelines for residential historic districts. However, given the language in that particular document, it likely acts very similar to the comprehensive plan. So if you look to the language in the introduction of that document, it is to provide guidance. It is to be used as a benchmark. It's to be used to encourage, appropriate historic development. And as it states in this quote, a basis for making informed and consistent decisions by this Historic Preservation Commission. So again, if you're denying an application or a C of A because it fails to meet some criteria, the more criteria you can tie it to, the more solid and secure your decision will be. And again, where the reference is to Boise City Code Title 11, that development code, that is where several of our procedures that we'll get into a little bit more in detail do kind of tie over some of these more broadly local land use laws that really are more applicable to Planning and Zoning Commission, things like that, but tie them over and sort of overlay some of those onto the Historic Preservation Commission. So in terms of when you are considering a particular certificate of appropriateness, as you know, like I said, there are several different criteria that you look at in terms of whether or not the certificate of appropriateness meets those decision guidelines. The best way to make a record to support your decision is to highlight the specific criteria that are met or not met. So start with that criteria, look at relevant facts in the record, and really make that connection between where these criteria really fall into place, or whether the record is lacking any evidence in support of those things. In terms of actual decisions, now that you kind of have a broad overview of where the scope and authority comes from, we're going to look a little bit more deeply into the actual decisions, and I might repeat myself a couple times just to emphasize a couple of points that I'd like to make in regards to the decisions. So first and foremost is this reasoned statement where have asked the commissioners, or where staff may ask for you to expound upon a reason, or where Madam Chair may ask if you can explain the basis of your motion on a particular certificate of appropriateness. This really ties back to the requirement that we provide a reasoned statement in support of the decision. And where you're looking at this particular quote, this does come from LUPA. So this is not the statute that gives authority for historic preservation or the establishment of the commission, but where it is tied together in our own code. And really the reasoned statement is it provides the basis for what criteria were relied upon, the relevant facts that weigh in favor or against that, the rationale of the commission in terms of reaching its decisions, and where it ties back to that authority that we just outlined in the previous slides. That is really, this reasoned statement really is what should drive deliberations. So instead of keeping it kind of ephemeral or sort of heady, of really driving it down into things that are pulled from the record. By our development code, this is in 110303, a reasoned statement has to have these things. It has to have applicable criteria and standards, has to have the relevant facts that are relied upon, and again, the rationale for the decision based on our Boise City Comp Plan, the applicable ordinances, factual information that is in the record. Staff does a lot of this work for you. So all of the relevant information, or really the information that starts driving the record and driving the public hearing, comes from Ted or his staff report in introducing any certificate of appropriateness. And in those conditions of approval or the recommendation from staff, that staff report is your reasoned statement if it fits your decision. So if staff recommends approval and the commission also opts for approval, then a motion by any one of the commissioners could be, I move that we deny C of A, blah, 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 for the reasons in the staff report. And you don't really have to go any further than that. It's where your decision strays away from what the staff report or staff recommendation is, that really the commissioner who's making that motion needs to sort of start from scratch and be able to really not nitpick, that's not the right word, but really be able to distinguish between facts that the staff report put forward in support of their recommendation and facts that that commissioner is relying on to make a different resolution to that particular certificate of appropriateness. When you're making a reasoned statement in support of a decision or a particular motion, there's no magic words. You don't have to state my reasoned statement is, and you don't have to necessarily outline all of the applicable criteria or every single fact in the record that could possibly be in support. It really is just giving enough of a basis so that if I were to take that cold record, if I didn't sit in the hearing and I didn't listen to the public hearing, but I were to take that reasoned statement kind of in a vacuum, I would have at least enough basis to understand why the commission came to the decision that they did. And that is really to kind of put the applicant on notice if there's any challenge to that decision as to what the reasons were and the things that they either would need to change or modify or things of that nature. And this is where brevity is great, and sometimes we as lawyers are far too verbose, but that brevity is not always a virtue, because simply drawing a conclusion is not adequate. So being able to say this certificate of appropriateness, or we'll just take an example of, house, there's a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of an existing non-contributing one-story house, and they want to put in a 1.5 story. It would not be sufficient to say, we deny this certificate of appropriateness because it doesn't meet with the comprehensive plan. You would need to be able to say, this 1.5 story would not, we're denying this certificate of appropriateness for this 1.5 story because its height is too tall for the neighborhood. No other building is within 10 feet of the proposed height. Or you'd need to be able to state, we're denying this because the way that the porch is designed is too big for this particular neighborhood, and no other building on this, or no other structure on this street has a covered patio. Things of that nature, regarding the setbacks or whatever. It really is to be able to take that, the criteria, what the fact is, and why it does or doesn't not meet that criteria. So again, this is just sort of the legal pointer to avoid conclusory statements. Use your deliberations to mention those specific facts that you're relying on and tie them back to the particular aspect of this project that you like or you don't like. Additionally, you want to target your motions to specific applications, and this we'll talk a little bit more about when we're talking about the actual legal procedure and due process requirements. But this has been brought up in the Historic Preservation Commission previously, and this is that you act in what's called the quasi-judicial capacity when you're deciding a particular certificate of appropriateness. And that's as opposed to legislative action. So legislative action is kind of broadly going to apply to a particular group of people or a particular status of people. Quasi-judicial is where you're deciding a particular application that is only applicable to this one particular circumstance. And so where you are deciding certificate of appropriateness, whether it should be approved or denied, you are acting in a quasi-judicial and that a capacity, and that is specific to this particular motion and this particular application. So you have to address each criteria separately, and you have to do it in every single application. So even if you're denying a particular certificate of appropriateness for the same reasons you just denied the last 3, you still need to tie it back to the specific facts on that particular certificate of appropriateness and not simply tie it to, well, we did it on the last one, so we're going to do it here too. Also, I wanted to make a point about substitute motions. And this is in regards to conditions of approval in the staff report, where sometimes the commission may make a motion that approves all we move to approve with all conditions that are put forth in the staff report. Oftentimes, however, the commission wants to remove or to modify one particular condition. If some of that changes after a motion has been made and there's been some discussion or deliberations on a particular motion, there's not really such thing as what's called a friendly amendment to a motion. What really should happen is the commissioner who made the initial motion should withdraw the motion. If the chair finds there's no objection to that withdrawal, then the commissioner, or that same commissioner or any other commissioner for that matter, can make a substitute motion. But there's not really an amendment to a motion because you would need 2 votes either way. You'd need to vote to amend the motion and then vote on the amended motion. So a cleaner way to do that is to either ask for a withdrawal of the initial motion and then without objection make a new one, or take the 2 different votes. And I know that's a procedure that often gets relatively messy, especially after 3 or 4 commissioners have put forward their deliberations or their perspectives on a particular certificate of appropriateness. Okay, I think we're gonna, oh wait, I'll try to get through a couple more quick slides. And then we'll wrap up so that Ted has time to go over the agenda and hopefully we can still give you guys a quick break. So after a decision has been made, obviously there are potential for that appeal to go above and beyond Historic Preservation Commission. The best way to preserve or to prevent an appeal really is to just build your solid record. There are some bases, so our code defines on what basis there can be an appeal from a Historic Preservation Commission decision. And really it ties back to, is it arbitrary? Is there error? Was there unlawful procedure? But there are very specific criteria that somebody who is appealing a decision has to meet. And so when we're talking about if something was arbitrary, we'll talk about procedure on another time, but if it was arbitrary and capricious, made without substantial evidence, that type of thing, it's really is there enough support in the record to come to the conclusion HPC came to? If there are conflicting opinions or if there's room for more than one opinion, as long as the Historic Preservation Commission can support its decision with facts in the record, there won't be finding of error. There really is some deference to the Historic Preservation Commission or really any primary decision-making body, because we consider those primary decision-making bodies as the experts in their particular field, right? So you all are made up of architecture or architects, historians, designers, things of that nature who have all worked in this area before. So there will be deference given if you're able to support what decision you made on the record. It's not very often that we have decisions from the Historic Preservation Commission go all the way up to a district court. But if there were to be a judicial review after an appeal to City Council, it's likely that the Historic Preservation Commission deliberations will be that focus because of the deference that our code gives to the initial decision-making body. And really, that's just another way of saying that our City Council has a limited appellate role under our development code. And so I really wouldn't worry too much about appeal. Really, it's just developing your own record and making sure that you have a solid decision in the public or following the public hearing. Again, this is just kind of reviewing a couple of the other criteria and just a little more detail. So changing the lower decision requires that the higher decision-making body finds error with the Historic Preservation Commission, and that's where a decision may be reversed or modified. A couple of things to keep in mind is, or I guess I'll get to those in a moment, but The appeal criteria, as you can see here, is does it violate some state or city law? Did it exceed statutory authority? Was there unlawful procedure? Was it arbitrary, or was it not supported by substantial evidence in the record? And finally, with appeals from Historic Preservation Commission, one caution, I guess, that legal would like to provide is pay attention to the life of the application and where the scope and duties of a Historic Preservation Commission are. So one thing where there could be a basis for error is that the decision is not within the purview of Historic Preservation Commission. One of those items that has come up is that really the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission is forward-looking of, is this certificate of appropriateness and what this particular applicant want to do in line now and moving forward in line with the criteria outlined in our ordinances and under those statutes. Where that can provide basis for appeal or for reversal is where it's backward looking on what did that applicant do in previous months, what particular actions were or were not taken prior to filing of the certificate of appropriateness, that type of thing. Also keeping in mind that Historic Preservation Commission is just one avenue that a project may have to go through in order to get approval and actually be built. So always consider or feel free to ask staff where sort of the next step in that life cycle of the application is going to be. So there are other decision bodies such as design review, planning and zoning, and city council, where there may be aspects of that project that historic preservation may want to consider as to whether or not it meets its applicable criteria, but maybe outside of the basis for a sole reason for that particular approval or denial. That would be, for example, a variance or a conditional use permit. If the Historic Preservation Commission were to approve setbacks or not approve setbacks, it would be, we would caution against making that by saying, well, they don't meet the setbacks and they don't have a variance, because it's likely that that would be the following another step in the process that's outside of the purview of Historic Preservation Commission. Rather, if you didn't like the setbacks, instead of tying it to their not having approval on a variance, tie it to historic guideline principles as to why it would not be in line with that particular neighborhood. And if there are any quick questions before I turn it over to Ted, I think that's where we'll stop for today, and then we'll pick up at work session next time.
Thank you, Mary. All good, Ted, whenever you're ready.
Okay. And if you guys have questions for our legal staff, you can email me those questions and I can kind of compile them and send them to Mary, and she can draft a response. And Mary will be coming back next month for part 2 of this, the legal show. So there will be questions you can ask then too. I'll go over the agenda really quick. The first 2 items are ratification of findings for applications that were denied by the commission. So these, if the commission is okay with these, then these can go on the consent agenda.
I'd like to hear the first one. I have some modifications.
On the findings, or?
For the findings of the denial, I don't think it's clear from what was said last meeting and what's in the findings.
Okay, so you want to clarify some language on that, on
Yes.
the first one? Okay. Okay. So the item number 2, the findings will be on consent agenda. The item number 1, findings will be open for clarification. Is that done in a document hearing or a work session? Okay, so item number 3 is proposed for consent as well. DRH 2190. Item 4 is proposed for consent as well. DRH 21102. And the rest will be heard. Mostly due to applicants having some issues with conditions of approval. So if there are no corrections to that, then we will hear the first finding to clarify some language. The second finding, item number 2, the second finding, and then item number 3 and 4 will all be consent.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
well,
it.
let's go ahead and call it. Or are there any final questions for Ted before we call it for a quick 2-minute break? No? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and call the work session and we will commence at 6 p.m. Today is the 26th of April, 2021, and this is the scheduled time and place for the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. I'm Chairperson Montoto, and I now call the meeting to order. Victoria, would you please take the roll?
Rupp,
Here.
Maroney,
Here.
Weaver,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Montoto,
Here.
Kintai,
Here.
6 present, 2 absent.
I'll now turn it over to Ted for our little virtual introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Historic Preservation Commission meeting. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Excuse me. Everyone from the public entering the hearing has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. You'll be promoted to panelist and will rejoin the meeting after a slight delay. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. If the chat function isn't available for you, you can email zoninginfo@cityofboise.org with any technical issues. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who signed up on the online sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in city code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate to render a decision. For tonight's agenda and proceedings will be almost the same as in-person hearings, except we might have a bit of a delay as we work through the technology. Please be courteous and patient with us while we venture through this virtual format. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ted. Have all the commission members had a chance to review the minutes from the March 29th, 2021 meeting? Does anyone have any comments or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, I will now take a motion on the March 29th, 2021 minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Rupp. Do I have a second?
Second.
Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. I believe we have 3 possible items for consent this evening, beginning with item number 2, DRH 21-00077, Gerald Courtwright at 709 West Eastman Street. Does the commission have any questions on this matter? And these are findings for ratification of findings for denial. So I don't think we need to follow up with any of the following questions. So with that, item number 2 will be placed on the consent agenda. And the next item we have is item number 3, DRH 21-00090, Amy Allgaier at 1817 West Brumbach Street. Does the commission have any questions on this matter? Is the applicant present?
Yes, you're here.
Perfect. Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval?
We are.
Wonderful. Ted, was there any written opposition to this matter?
Madam Chair, there was not.
Thank you. Is there anyone present tonight wishing to testify against this matter?
Madam Chair, we have a raised hand. I would just ask to clarify if they would like to testify against it.
Thank you. Can you clarify if you are wishing to testify against this matter?
I would like to testify that I'm in support of it, but also I had some questions I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask questions.
It is not, but if you are in support of the application and would like to ask questions that could potentially shift your opinion to being against the matter, we would need to remove that item from the consent agenda and hear it. If you could just clarify.
Oh, gosh, this is a tough one because I know consent agenda is important for the applicant. I just wanted to know if the applicant or the homeowner is required to live in one of the units in order to have an ADU on it, or can they rent both of the both of the units? Is that a legal requirement? That's all I was going to ask.
ADAs carry a deed restriction that requires the owners to live in one or the other. Legally, no, they would not be able to rent out both of those units.
Okay, therefore I do not object to it and I support it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. Moving forward, seeing none and based on the representation of the applicant and lack of opposition, item DRH 21-00090 will be placed on the consent agenda. The next item we have up for consent this evening is item number 4, DRH 21-00102, Amy Allgaier at 1611 North 17th Street. Does the commission have any questions on this matter? Is the applicant present?
Yes, we are.
Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Ted, was there any written opposition to this matter?
Madam Chair, there was not.
Thank you. Is there anyone present tonight wishing to testify against this matter? Okay, seeing none and based on the representation of the applicant and lack of opposition, item number DRH 21-00102 will be placed on the consent agenda. I move that the consent agenda and all items on the consent agenda be approved subject to all the findings and conclusions and conditions of approval agreed upon for each application. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Montoto.
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll now start with our first item on the agenda this evening. This is item DRH 21-00012, Patrick Garrity at 717 North 19th Street. This is a discussion and ratification of findings for denial that we are going to open for clarification. Ted, I guess I'll turn it to you and then we can just start from there.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. This was an application heard last month that was denied by the commission. It involved demolition of an existing single-family structure, relocation of a canal to accommodate a new single-family structure, and then it also involved an appeal of a retroactive approval for 10 mature trees that were removed from the property. So the commission deliberated, heard testimony and deliberated, and decided to deny the application. And so these are the findings for that denial brought back before you. So I think Commissioner Brown had some changes she would like to make.
Thank you, Ted. Commissioner Brown, if you would like to clarify your modifications.
Sure. So the first one is number 2. It should read, the commission found the request to be consistent, request not to be consistent with the guidelines, and then specifically on page 3 of the guidelines, Idaho Code 67-4608. And then it goes on to say a little bit later, it says Boise Canal on the property was historically important and represented a contributing component of the property. Instead of property, it should be district. It's contributing to the overall historic district. So that's why I want that clarification. And then finally, the last section on number 2 is the motion was also put into question the non-contributing status of the property and suggested that the owners should have a new survey completed to ensure the classification. So that wasn't included in our motion for denial, but that was brought up by the public. So a clarification that the motion was put into question by the public. And then on number 3, the third sentence, it says again, the historic integrity of the property. It's the historic integrity of the historic district, the overall district, since it's a non-contributing property, but has elements that contribute to the overall district. And then I think there's one more reference to the property. So for number 4, the commission determined that the location of the Boise Canal on the property was historically important and represented a contributing component to the district. Again, it's the other change.
Wonderful. And legal, we need a motion on these modifications. Is that correct? Wonderful. Okay. So I just need a motion to approve or deny these modifications to the ratification of findings.
Can I approve that?
Oh, sorry, what?
Can I approve it since I asked for the changes?
I believe there needs to be a motion put on the floor to approve or deny those ratification or the modifications to the ratification of findings, and then a second and a vote.
Thank you, legal.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Weaver.
I move that we approve the modifications to the ratifications of findings based on the statements just made.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Wonderful. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Hintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, the first, or I guess this.
Madam Chair, I'll
Oh,
just clarify.
sure.
I'll plan to remove the reference to the contributing status from all the areas on this. I had thought that Commissioner Koski had mentioned something about that in his motion, but I'll have that reference completely removed
Thank you, Ted.
from there. So
We'll now move to item number 5 on our agenda this evening. This is DRH 21-00122, Jeff Likes at 2124 North Harrison Boulevard. Ted, can we please have the report?
okay, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This item is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a new single-family structure and detached garage with accessory dwelling unit on a vacant substandard lot in the Harrison Boulevard Historic District. This is an aerial of the property to be developed. It appears from the aerial, I mean, it looks like something had previously existed there on this property, but as I went back and looked through Sanborn maps and old GIS renderings of the property, I could not find a building that ever existed on this property. It did previously have a ditch or a canal that ran right kind of down through the middle of it, which was obviously covered or tiled over. So, but this represents the property on the corner of Dora and Harrison Boulevard, fronting Harrison Boulevard with Dora Street extending along the northern part of the property. This is the proposed site plan that the applicant has provided. So here you have, again, Harrison Boulevard along the front or west portion of the property, and then Dora along the north street side. And then the residence will be here fronting Harrison with a detached garage in the rear. The detached garage is actually proposed to take access from Dora Street. As you'll notice and read in the staff report, there are a couple of variances that the applicant is going to need to apply for if this project is approved. One of those is for the street side setback of the house, which our code requires a 15-foot setback, and the applicant is requesting about a 5-foot setback on that street side. The other is the garage. So if the garage, if allowed to be located with street access, if allowed to be located as proposed, would need a rear setback as well. Garages that are not accessed from an alley are required to meet the standard setback for the zone, which is 15 feet. The code also requires, excuse me, when an alley is available, the code does require that access be taken from that alley. You may have read in the letter of explanation, the applicant is proposing access from the street. Apparently there is a power pole located along the alley section that effectively or makes it difficult to access the garage from the alley. This isn't uncommon in the historic district. Often there are power poles located in alleys that block access. The property owners are encouraged to work with Idaho Power to mitigate that effect, either by moving the pole or doing something with the power lines if it's the power lines that are in the way of the construction. So you'll note in the staff report, staff did recommend that access to this garage be taken from the alley rather than from the street. The commission has in the past approved street access similar to this, but that has generally been when traditional street access has occurred at that location. This is an aerial generally pointing out the corner properties here. The applicant has brought this up as sort of a justification for that 5-foot setback of the house. So if you do look at the corner houses on Dora and Harrison Boulevard, each of the other 3 corner properties that are developed do have starkly reduced setbacks, which is not uncommon in the historic districts either, because these are structures that were constructed prior to our code being in place. So the property right across Dora, for instance, has about a 5 or 6 foot setback from the street. The property kitty corner across Harrison Boulevard is about 7 feet. These are just rough estimates. And then about right across Harrison Boulevard, that one's 5 or 6 feet as well. And the applicant is similarly wanting to look at a 5-foot setback. One thing to keep in mind there, I suppose a case can be made to approve those setbacks based on the historic context of the neighborhood. The applicant, however, would need to go through the variance process to request a variance for that setback. And in doing so would need to provide a hardship or special circumstance to justify that reduced setback. It is a small substandard corner lot, and sometimes that can be used as a special circumstance as well. But just keep in mind that that process has to be approved through that variance for them to get these setbacks. This is the rendering of and a drawing of the front elevation. Peak height of the house is proposed to be 28 feet, which is probably generally okay with Harrison Boulevard neighborhood. You'll note the second level has an entry, glass door entry, and then a balcony off of that. And then a lower level porch. This elevation in the upper left is the street elevation that would be that elevation that's about 5 feet back from Dora Street. As you can see, it does show some design interest. It does break up the material with using vertical or horizontal board and stucco. And it also includes the brick chimney and then the varied roof lines there. So there is some breakup of the massing on that street side, and as well as some incorporated design interest as well. And then this is the garage with the ADU above. Similar design to the house, will be mostly clad in stucco. These are some photos of the neighborhood. And then a shot of the alley. So here are some, these are some of the issues I brought up already. The street side setbacks for the house, the rear setback for the garage. Again, if the commission approves that street access, the garage will need a variance for that setback. And then the access from the street being an issue itself when the code encourages alley access. So we do have a condition of approval, as I previously said, that the access do occur from the alley. Staff is recommending approval of the application with the conditions of approval listed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Are there any questions for Ted? Okay, is the applicant present?
Yeah, hi. Eric Anderson with the architecture. Jeff Likes is not present, so I'll be representing tonight.
Wonderful. If you could state your address for the record, please.
Yeah, 1119 East State Street, Suite 120, Eagle, Idaho.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Go ahead. You have 20 minutes.
Okay, so yeah, first we'll start off with this lot, beyond Harrison and Dora. It's a pretty prominent lot, one of the last, or if not the only piece of bare land left on Harrison. Our goal is to provide a home that blends with what's currently there, with the massing, the look, the certain features we have on Harrison, the patio, the neighborhood feel, the width, the height, breaking up the mass of the home between single story and 2-story. On the house, of course, then we want to do ADU off the back. So unfortunately, this house is on a corner and it is a substandard lot, making it very hard to give. If we don't go through the variance process, really you end up with a 26-foot wide home on Harrison versus a 36-foot wide home, which I think now the home becomes an infill home, which I don't think we want to see as a community, and especially in the north end. I don't think we want to see an infill home, a narrow, skinny home on Harrison and Dora on a prominent corner like this. So we're trying to be sensitive of what's around. We've done thorough research on everything else, what's happening in the area. There's 59 corner homes along Harrison, 15 cross streets, and only 5 of those homes take access from the alley. So being sensitive to that, we're proposing to move the garage over 10 feet from the alley versus being in a 0 lot line. And so you have a good landscape buffer from the alley, some good distance, allowing us to have a driveway that's actually usable. Taking access off the alley just becomes very difficult with the previous fencing and garage that was built, and then with the power pole and stuff there. So going down that path, I think we have fairly good precedence of other homes in the area, like I say, with the way they're taking access. And a lot of those garages you'll see are right up against the alley, not set 10 foot back. So like I say, we're trying to be sensitive to that and provide a nice buffer. Additionally, now when we move over to the house and we're talking about 5 foot versus a 15-foot setback, about all the homes along Harrison are 5 feet off the property line on a setback, not 15. So for the city code and my letter of intent, we cite a section where it is, we are trying, it is required or requested that we try to do what's been done around the neighborhood and blend in and stay with precedence. So a lot of the homes are 19 to 22 feet off the pavement, edge of pavement, and that's what we're proposing. So now moving over to the front elevation, you'll see we have the tall 2-story portion with the nice patio. Then we drop down to single story over to the Dora side. So when you're coming off the Dora side, that 5 foot setback isn't, you're not looking at a very large 2-story right in your face. I mean, you've got 10, 15 feet before you go to a full 2-story. So you break that up, you're not looking at a large mass as you come down Dora. So those are the 2 items we're trying to get support on as we move forward with this project. And with that being said, I'd sure stand for any questions. Additionally, actually, I need to come back into the 2-story portion of the home. We did go a little bit bigger. I know it's 50% of the first floor, but we cannot go down. We cannot do a basement at this place because of the creek. It just would require a lot of work in relocating that creek and retiling. So we're proposing we went a little bit bigger, not by much, but like 30 feet bigger than 50%. I mean, it's not much bigger. So anyways, I'd love to answer any questions I can. And let's hopefully we can we can work with these few items we have to get a home that we feel would look very nice on this corner. And yeah, I stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any questions from the commission? Any questions for Ted or Mr. Anderson? Okay, thank you so much. Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify?
Hello, good evening, Commission. This is Kate Henwood from the North End Neighborhood Association. I live at 1116 North 12th Street. We do support the staff recommendation for approval, but specifically want to emphasize the condition that the garage access be from the alley and not supporting a variance on the side setback. And that's it from us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Henwood.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any members of the public this evening wishing to testify? Doesn't seem we have anyone. So, Mr. Anderson, if you would like, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal, or you can yield your time.
Okay, am I back on?
Yes.
I've talked to the owner a bit, and we don't want. I mean, if we have to, we'd have to take access off the alley on the garage, and we understand that. We can work with that. I really would like the commission to consider the setback off Dora, the 5 foot versus 15, and consider support on the variance moving forward. I know we have to go through a variance process, but like I say, no other homes in that whole area are 15 feet off the corner or off the side yard or side street. There, about every home around that along Harrison is basically at a 5 to 7 foot setback roughly. So we would like to stay consistent, and it is part of the code where the code section, like I say in my letter, asks that we stay consistent with the surrounding properties. So we would sure like to get support on that one issue. And like I say, we really don't want to have a tall, skinny, infill looking home on that corner. And I don't think the neighborhood would either. So if we can work through that, that would be great. And if we can get support, we'd sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, I will go ahead and close the public portion of the hearing and will consider a motion or discussion.
I'd like to open up for discussion.
Sure, Commissioner Brown.
I think the two conditions that Ted has included, condition E and condition J, I don't think it's necessary for them to have access to the garage off the alley. I think street access is fine. The historic district period of significance goes up to the 40s. People had cars, people had driveways. So I don't think that's something we should hold them to, that it can be off the street and doesn't have to be off the alley. And then the setback, I think allowing them to have their setback that they want will give us a better design for this home. I agree with them. I don't want a tall, skinny house on Harrison Boulevard. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Do any other commissioners want to share their thoughts or emotion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would just like to add that I agree with the setback. I feel like the house will look better if it is a little bit wider, and it does seem to align with the design of other houses in the neighborhood. And I would, they do still have to go through that process, but I would support that. I would prefer to see the access to the garage off the alley. I know that's a bit of work to make that happen, but I do feel like that is more common in the area and more common on that street and would fit in better with that area of the Harrison Boulevard neighborhood.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver. Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I'm just going to echo what Commissioner Weaver said, where I'm fine with the width of the house, but and that setback, but I would prefer the alley access to the garage.
Wonderful. With that, I will go ahead and entertain a motion if anyone would like to attempt one.
I approve to approve DHR 21-00122 with the staff condition approval, except to strike condition J.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, sorry.
Can I give a point of order?
Sure, please.
Jay is, staff isn't really supporting or not supporting the variance. Jay is just basically pointing out that
A variance is
a
needed.
variance is needed.
Is it G?
So that it's not saying they're not allowed to have that setback. It's just saying that that they need to meet the setback or get a variance. So I think we're okay with that.
Wonderful.
With that condition.
Commissioner Brown, did you want to clarify?
Okay, so leave that one in, is what he's saying.
He's saying that the variance will have to be approved by another determining body. So we're just saying that we're okay with the application as is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I withdraw my previous motion. I move to approve DRH 21-00122 with the staff recommendations and conditions of approval.
Wonderful. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Rupp. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda this evening is item number 6, DRH 21-00126, Michael Muralio at 2629 West Ellis Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to demolish an existing detached garage and to construct a detached garage with accessory dwelling unit. This is in the expanded north end, and it is a contributing property. This is a aerial of the lot. As you can see, it fronts Ellis and then backs up to the Catholic Church and school parking lot and playground. And as you can see from this aerial as well, that right now there is an access point off of Ellis Avenue that cuts along the side of this house to the rear. And that is a photo of the house, if you can see it through the tree. So this is the site plan provided by the applicant. The alley back here this way is technically to the south of the property, and then Ellis Avenue up front to the north. On their proposed site plan, they propose to keep that to keep the street access from Ellis Street. So it would continue to access from the street and through the rear to the new garage. The garage appears to have only a 3-foot setback from that west property line. 5 feet is required. So if the commission approves the design this way, they would again be required to go through the variance process and get a variance for that. I will say, as I said in the report, it's unclear what a hardship would be in this case. Maybe the applicant can further explain, but they will have to come up with a hardship for that variance. Otherwise, move the garage 2 feet to the east to get the 5 feet. As designed, as proposed, the rear setback, I don't think would be in compliance either. The garage itself is 15 feet from the rear property line. However, there is a deck balcony coming out of the back, and that balcony appears to extend into that setback. If the garage were designed to be loaded from the alley, this setback might be okay. If it were loaded from the alley, they would just need to meet the 22 feet of backup space, which includes the alley. But as designed, they only have 3 on this side. They need 5. And this deck appears to extend more than halfway into that rear 15-foot setback. This is a tandem garage. So it is designed to load in a tandem way with one car stacked behind the other instead of side by side. These are some renderings. And here on this bottom one, you can see the balcony extending out toward the alley. So again, code and guideline concerns on this one. With the construction of the new garage, staff does have a condition of approval on this one, that the access do occur from the alley and that the street access be closed and improved with curb gutter and detached sidewalk. Again, the interior setback is only 3 feet, needs to be 5, and the rear setback needs to be 15, including that balcony. So with that, staff does recommend approval of DRH 21-126 with the conditions of approval listed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Are there any questions for staff?
I have a question. Ted, is the I know that you mentioned that to close that off, they'd need to provide new curb gutter and sidewalk. I'm assuming there's no requirements that they actually would need to fill in the yard to extend it all the way across, so that they could leave the driveway there once it's on their property. And that's one question. And my other question is this recommendation, is it a code thing, or is it just because typically in the neighborhoods the alley, the access is from the alley, and this is unusual, but I'm curious if we know if it's been like this for a very, very long time, or if it's and that potentially originally it was from the back, or do you know at all? I didn't see any historic maps, or maybe I missed them in the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. As for the improvements that we would require on the front, what we would require, what this approval would require, would be closing off that access and improving it consistent with the adjacent properties. So installing curb, gutter, and then the separated sidewalk with the landscaping along that front as well. So as far as I think you were talking about the driveway, then the remainder of the driveway, could that remain? I suppose it could. That wasn't addressed, through our condition. So technically, they could keep that there. However, that being said, if they were to keep that there, it wouldn't be legal parking. It wouldn't, parking has to have a 20-foot setback from the front street property line. So if they were to keep that driveway paved to use for parking, it's technically not legal parking by city code. And I can't answer the question of how long that driveway has been there. I should have probably looked that up, but I didn't look up or look at maybe some Sanborn maps or anything like that to see how long that's back there. So I'm not sure. It is a code thing. Our code is pretty clear that when an alley is available, that access should occur off that alley. And it is more traditional in these older neighborhoods for access to occur off of the alley as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any other questions for Ted? Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
My name is Michael Moralio, 2629 West Ellis Avenue.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. I thank you for inviting me here today. I look forward to hearing any questions you may have and make sure I address those. But first, I'd like to provide a summary of the project, as well as address 2 conditions of approval recommended in the staff report. So first off, I've owned my home since 2012. My wife and I, we love living in the North End. She grew up on 14th Street and is 3rd generation Boise High graduate. We have twin 2-year-olds and they're welcoming our 3rd child here this summer. We're pretty excited. We love our home, neighbors, and neighborhood, and we are applying for this certificate of appropriateness as we need more space to fit the needs of our growing family. The goals of the design are to provide a non-leaning safe garage for vehicle parking, workshop space, as well as store camping gear, family bikes, etc. Provide a place for family and guests to stay, and also additional office space. Preserve the historic look to match to the house and use congruent materials to meet this goal. And then, make sure that our garage ADU does not exceed the roof height of our home. And also, as part of this project, we propose solar panels to generate sufficient electricity to power the home, the garage ADU, and charging electric vehicle. There were 2 conditions of the approval brought up in the staff report that Ted discussed that I'd like to now address. In doing so, I just want to make it clear that the historic preservation and planning and zoning have been extremely helpful to me in this application process. So I'm not questioning the quality of the work, but I believe these 2 items require a little further discussion by the commission. And the staff was probably unaware of these things due to kind of GIS public right-of-way analysis that might be done. So the condition of condition number 1, or condition A, regarding windows, the condition read, window material shall be wood, metal clad wood, or fiberglass, and be recessed from the exterior wall pane. Vinyl windows are not allowed in the historic district. So while I understand this condition very clearly, I don't know, with over half of my home having vinyl windows and the majority of the rest of the windows are either aluminum or metal, I'm not sure if this condition, might pertain to my home. So at this time, I have not selected or priced any windows used for construction, but however, I request the commission consider listing this condition or modifying it for the windows that are not visible in the public right of way, just in case final windows do become a viable option. So that's condition number one. The second condition that I'd like to discuss is condition of approval F that states vehicle access shall be taken from the alley. The curb cutoff of Ellis Street shall be closed and the area improved with curb gutter, separated sidewalk and landscaping to match existing along the street frontage. Any new trees shall be approved from the city's forestry division. So this condition of approval surprised me, to say the least. I heard a few minutes ago, one of the commissioners asked how old the driveway is. I'm not as old as the house, but since the house and the driveway were constructed with the exact same materials and siding and everything like that, I am pretty confident in saying that the garage, the front loading garage, was built in 1937, same as the home. So I've had historical access, or the home's had historical access off Ellis Street since then. I purchased my home in a large part due to the front loading garage, and I have a 17-foot long driveway, which affords me off-street parking, which is not a given in the North End by any means. And so, never in a million years would I have even purchased the home in 2012 if it did not have, kind of this added benefit, and which my family finds a big safety benefit, because we also have, as you can see in the site plan, a side entry right off the driveway that goes directly into our home. So the condition to abandon that would be very harmful in that sense. Also, after seeing the draft of the staff report, my block alone, there are 3 front loading garages, 2 directly across from my driveway. So directly across the street from my driveway, as shown in the site plan, there are 2 front loading garages. There are front loading driveways and a garage. I very much appreciate that we do have front loading garages and driveways on my street, because parking can be a big issue because of our proximity to St. Mary's Catholic School and the church. And so, as you can imagine, when there's church or events going on at the school, street parking's at a premium. So my driveway can fit 3 vehicles. We only have 2, but 3 vehicles off the street. So it's a big asset to our property. So also, when I was able to see this condition of approval listed in the staff report, I started to look a little bit more down my street, and on Ellis Avenue, which isn't a very long street, I found that there's 22 front loading driveways. Additionally, just 4 houses away, we're at kind of the corner there of where Ellis meets Lemp. There's 5 front loading garages in a row, basically, between 2601 and 2718 Lemp Street. So this is just right down the block. So this, to me, to my understanding, front loading garages are part of the historic fabric of the North End. One of those front loading garages is at the 2718 Lemp Street. The owner of that property, the homeowner, is Zach Smith, and he was approved in 2020 for a certificate of appropriateness to construct a 4-car garage and an ADU toward the rear of the property. So when I reviewed his approved application, DRH 19-00211, this condition of approval was not listed. So, I know your previous applicant tonight also had a scenario where he's access off the street for his garage ADU, and mine might be a little bit different because as I don't know how long his was, but with Zach's DRH 19-00211, he was able to maintain his front load driveway access, his curb cut out, and his driveway off of Lemp into his garage. So basically what I would like to ask the commission is, why would I be treated any differently? Why would I be forced to abandon my front loading garage off Ellis when his application was recently approved? Thus, I would like to request the commission consider removing this condition of approval F from the certificate of appropriateness. So with that, I'd love to answer any questions that may come from the commission and see if there's anything else I can help with.
Thank you, Mr. Moralio. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you so much. Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify?
Hi, good evening again. Kate Henwood, 1116 North 12th Street. I was not planning to testify, but we would like to support the applicant's request to maintain the front loading driveway. And that's our only comment on this one.
Thank you so much, Ms. Henwood.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public tonight wishing to testify?
Madam Chair, first up will be Dana.
Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Dana, and I am a neighbor of Mike and Kyla's. I live across the street, and they are just
Dana,
wonderful.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you just state your address for the record, please?
Oh, sorry. 2615 West Lemp, L-E-M-P Street.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. The back of the house where I live faces Mike and Kyla's house, and they have just been great neighbors. I love having them as part of the neighborhood. They're conscientious. They keep the front of the house looking beautiful all year long. And it's such a joy to watch their kids grow up. I really in support of what they're trying to do to help their family grow and so they can stay in the neighborhood. I would be really sad if they couldn't manage to get this done and then have to move. So I'm just 100% in support of them, and anything else any other questions I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you so much, Ms. Oland.
Madam Chair, next up will be Geraldine.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Geraldine Hack. I'm at 2615 West Lemp Street. I'm a neighbor of Mike's. My garage loads from the street. I'm one of them right across from him. He's been an incredible neighbor. I also was the designer for 2626 Ellis Street, which was built in 1940. The garage was added in 1951 due to neighbor that was older but knew the date. And theirs is a front loading garage. So when this came up, he came to me and talked to me because I've been a designer on 6 houses within 1 block of here. And the front of I'm 3 houses or right across from him, but on Lemp Street, again, there is 5 houses that have street loading garages, one of which was built in 1951, 2610, because I almost bought that one before buying the one I'm in. And that garage was built in 1951. And I know that because I met the neighbor who knew. Also, the one across the street from me, which is 2620, their garage was built 22 years after their home, and theirs is a street loading garage. My home was built in 1958, and the garage was built with it and is street loading. I know Zach, I knew about his ADU, and I didn't mind it going in. In fact, right now we have speed bumps on my street, Lemp, and Mike's street on Ellis because it's too speedy. And one of the things we like about our neighborhood is walking, and it slows traffic down. And as far as Mike goes, I was a designer on the inside of his home too. And he does have over 50% of his windows are vinyl and the rest are aluminum and some metal. So I wanted to point that out too. As far as someone testified earlier that more traditional homes are entered from the alley, but clearly Lemp and Ellis are not the case for that, because the majority of houses, or at least half I counted, are street loading, not alley loading garages. And so it's not unusual to have a street loading garage. And I actually encouraged Mike to drive down to Ellis and count how many there were. And that's when he was surprised at how many there were. So with that, he's a great neighbor, came to me, asked me what I thought about his build. I told him he needed to match to make sure that it looked appealing from the street. And I encouraged him to work with an architect, etc. So he's done a really good job, and he's very conscientious of all of our neighbors. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hack. That's time. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify this evening?
Next will be Kara.
Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Kara Katzenmeier. I live at 2627 West Ellis. I am Mike's neighbor to the east, and I agree with everything everyone else said. He's a wonderful neighbor. And I do think street access is important in a number of ways. One of them being that there are children in the alley at St. Mary's, and that alleyway is already really congested. And I think the fewer people accessing homes from the alley, the better. So what else was there? My only concern would be with the design of this two-story structure, given that our homes are one story. And the 8 windows appear from the brief rendering I saw here to be on the east side, which faces my yard. So my only concern is that the windows may be designed being at a higher elevation, so that, like those higher narrow windows potentially that don't look into my yard. I don't know if the line of sight is into my yard, but that just concerns me, feeling like I might have no privacy. But otherwise, I think that it looks like a great plan, and I'm in support of this project.
Thank you so much. It doesn't appear like we have anyone else wishing to testify this evening. So if the applicant would like, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Yeah, no, I just want to, thank everybody, the commission, my neighbors, everybody that's kind of supporting me on this project. And, just like I brought up earlier, we're just looking to stay in the home, the neighborhood, everything. I have great neighbors, as you guys obviously heard. And so just ask the commission just to kind of reconsider those 2 conditions of approval along with my application.
Thank you. Are there any final questions for staff or the applicant? Okay. With that, I will go ahead and close the public portion of the hearing, and we'll consider a motion or discussion.
I can say we can open up for discussion.
Sure.
So just like the other one I said, this area is a transition from homes that were built in the 20s and 30s to the 40s. People had cars. That was a change that was happening. So people started having garages that came off the street. So I think in this case, we should let them keep their driveway access. I think it's appropriate. I think you're changing the, if you start doing that, you'll change all of them, because it'll be a continuous anytime anybody has a project that will be closing off that street access, which closes a portion of Boise's history for how we see this transition from garages that access the alley from garages that access the street. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I'd like to just personally echo, I don't see a single problem with maintaining the front-loading driveway. In fact, I agree and think it would be problematic if we decided to take that out. And as Ted mentioned, it is just simply code. But this is why we are here as a commission to review things on an individual case-by-case basis. So if there aren't any additional comments, I would love to entertain a motion.
I motion to approve DRH 21-00126. And then strike the conditional of approval number or letter G. And then approve all the other conditions.
Just to clarify, was the condition,
I believe it's F.
was that F?
It's F.
Okay, perfect. So just to clarify, condition F.
Condition F, strike condition F.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Commissioner Rupp. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you so much. And our final item on tonight's agenda is DRH 21-00130 Quinn Rogers at 1607 North 14th Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to install a solar roof on a contributing house. The property is located in the North End Historic District. So this is an aerial of the property. And a photo of the facade. And these are some documents that the applicant provided, just showing kind of a top view of the house. So the solar panels will be, or not solar panels, it's an actual solar roof, will be installed on the entirety of the house. From what I understand, some of the panels will, I guess, be inert. They aren't, effectively located to receive solar, and then some will be active, but they will all look the same. It'll be a uniform roof. This is a rendering provided by the applicant on a pamphlet that's in your packet, showing a photo of this roof style installed on a house. And this kind of gives you a close-up of what these, how this roof comes together and what it looks like. So it sort of mimics to an extent, and the applicant will explain in more detail, I'm sure. It sort of tries to mimic a standard asphalt tile roof as far as the way it looks, but it's constructed a little bit differently, obviously, and up close appears a little bit differently. So in the guidelines, it states that materials should be used which are similar to materials found on roofs in the district. And then there are some other language. There really isn't anything in the historic district guidelines that address a solar roof. There is sections that address solar panels, but not an actual solar roof. So this is actually something quite new for the commission and for staff as well. So trying to mold in some of our guidelines into what this is a little bit different. I think the main one, though, is 5.9.2, using materials that are more traditionally found in the historic district. This certainly is not that. Staff did recommend denial of this application. Mostly, if this was proposed for a non-contributing house or a new house, new construction, I can see under certain circumstances where staff could certainly, recommend approval or at least have a more positive discussion on it. But due to it being on a contributing house, staff as you could see in our report, was a little more uncertain about that and kind of approached it in a more conservative manner with the guideline suggestion that roof materials be more traditional. And so we did recommend denial of DRH 21-130 due to those concerns in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Are there any questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Perfect. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 20 minutes. And if you'd like, you can each take turns, just yield your time, and then the other person will have to introduce themselves with the address as well.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. My name is Caitlin Trojak, 301 East 50th Street in Garden City. I just wanted to say thank you first, Madam Chair, commissioners, for hearing our presentation this evening. If we could please, can we share our screen? Wonderful. So Rachel's going to share our screen. I wanted to introduce everyone who we'll have presenting, but since they all get to do that.
Do you guys have a thumb drive by chance? I'm not sure you can share from up there, or I guess if you're logged in.
She's logged in.
Are you logged into the meeting? Oh, okay, sorry.
All right. Wait till I get it up. Perfect. So again, this is for DRH 20, well, we passed that, but no, it's okay. 21-00130 Tesla solar roof for 1607 North 14th Street for the Gardner family. Go ahead, next slide. So we'll all be taking a chance to speak tonight. Again, my name is Caitlin. Just kind of quickly run through who we are. Joshua Powell is our CEO. We have the Gardner, the homeowners here with us this evening. We have our field operations manager, Quinn, our sales operations manager, Rachel, and then myself, the customer operations manager for Revolution. So we wanted to, here's our quick little overview of our presentation. Biggest thing is, yeah, this is an entirely new roofing material. It is not solar panels that are retrofit to a composite shingle. So we really want to help educate what this material is. So what is solar roof? Obviously the benefits of it. I think a huge portion of what you guys will be concerned with are the applications, construction, and removal, because it is removable. And then maintaining the historic integrity with solar roof, and then the Gardner's mission as well. Go ahead, next. All right, so Rachel's gonna join.
Good evening. Thanks for having us tonight. I just quickly wanted to explain what Tesla solar roof is. I think it can be a little bit of a confusing concept, but really at its base, it's just a roofing material. It is a really great option for our customers who are either needing a roof replacement, such as the Gardners, whose roof is over 25 years old to protect the integrity of the home, but also want to utilize solar panels. This can be a more affordable option because the Tesla solar roof integrates the two together and is a little bit more low profile than having a conventional roof with solar panels above it. This slide was taken directly from Tesla. So yeah, but that's kind of exactly what it looks like installed on a roof. It actually does not mimic asphalt shingles, but rather a slate or metal tile roof, which is more in line with the North End roofing material. So yeah, it's basically just taking solar panels and a roofing material and combining them together. And then Quinn's going to speak to how it is installed and the details and specs of the material itself.
Good evening. Good evening, Quinn Rogers, 4297 East Florence Drive, Meridian, Idaho. Thank you for having us. Again, speaking to what Rachel just talked about, this is not more of a composition shingle. It definitely resembles more of a slate product. It's pretty nice looking when it goes on. The materials are glass and metal, very durable. The installation in the gardener's case is going to require a complete tear off of what their existing I think the original roof was either a shake or a cedar shingle roof that over the years has been gone over with composition shingles. I've personally been in their attic and looked at the structure, and we typically work with a structural engineer to evaluate the structure that we'd be removing the existing roofing product and then beefing up the structure, which is needed in order to maintain the weight of this new product. This is the actual inert glass shingle that will be going on the roof. Comes in various sizes, so you get kind of an architectural breakup as you're looking at the roof. Like this animation basically from Tesla doesn't do it really justice when you're actually looking from a street level. You get a lot more architectural breakup. During the construction process, it's a little bit more laborious than putting on a normal roof. It's got a 166-mile-an-hour wind rating. It's a very durable roof. They consider it a 45 to 50-year roof, as opposed to a typical. When I've driven around the historic area, I've seen 35, 40-year composition shingle roofs, which are great, but this is a very durable and I think attractive looking product. With that, I think you probably have more questions for us than we can possibly even, get into. So, take a minute.
Yep. So I think this is probably the bulk right here of what you guys are most concerned about. The solar roof will maintain the integrity of the home. It will maintain its historic significance. It will maintain the character of the home and the ability to interpret that character from the visual, walking by the street. It will actually be able to eradicate some of the obtrusive vents that are on the roof currently, because it has its own roof venting in the ridge cap. It's obviously allowing green energy. It is reversible. It is removable, just as any other roofing material is, because it is placed atop a plywood roofing material. Obviously, it's environmentally friendly. It won't cause any negative impacts on the structure itself. So I know that that's really important to the historical guidelines. We are not making any adjustments to the roof line, anything changing the structure of the home, just adding a new roof, which they have to have. We're not destroying or adjusting any of the home structure, obscuring any of the visuals, or removing any historical features, all of that stuff. I think now we'll get to hear from Josh, who is on the phone online.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
You are. If you could just state your address for the record, please.
1337 Lick Creek Road, McCall, Idaho.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for hearing us out. Appreciate the willingness to consider obviously a very new material, and I want to respond specifically to the materiality, and obviously it is a new material, but part of the purpose and sort of big picture of solar roof, and even a defined purpose of Tesla, is to make solar integration in residential homes more aesthetic and amenable to the people that wouldn't necessarily get it without an appearance that's more typical of traditional homes, and a recognition of that. There's some studies that indicate perhaps as many as 20 or 30% of homes would never get solar without a solution like this. And so if you're really trying to solve our energy problems and climate change, you really have to address materials that hew towards vernacular and are more acceptable to the general public. Obviously, the alternative for the gardeners here would be a retrofit solar installation, which presumably would be approved, as they have been before, even on a contributing structure. Our argument is that this will look much better and be less garish and less of a contrast. And so from a materiality perspective, these, while they're glass and metal, actually resemble metal and slate, a metal and slate appearance, and are very close to, at least in their installed appearance, very close to what those materials look like from a historic perspective. I also would argue that it's, nope, don't rush me. I would also argue that it's an improvement on the most common existing approved material, asphalt shingles. And I'm sure the board knows, for the most part, asphalt shingles didn't really exist. They were pretty new material towards the end of the period we're talking about. So they're not particularly extant, and they have an extremely high carbon footprint because they're basically the bottom of the barrel when we think about oil. So, that's a material we really want to get out of the system. As a contrast to conventional PV, I also want to talk about this conventional PV being a traditional retrofit array. Some of the things we've seen in the historic district are arrays that don't have any kind of setback at all. In other words, fire access to the roof has become a very important thing for codes. Now you typically are going to have to set back at least 3 feet at the edges and the ridges, which is going to make even more contrast in the district. This roof has all of that built in, so you don't see a difference in the material in the layout of the system, and fire departments can access the roof more safely. By the nature of the material, it's glass and it's surrounded in glass tiles that separate it from the metal ridges and flashings. The array is actually isolated and grounded independent of an electrical ground because it's essentially glass insulated on the roof. It has extremely high wind uplift, Miami-Dade 166, higher than probably any asphalt shingle, certainly in the equivalent range of high-end metal roofs and slate. And likewise, reduces snow and ice damage potential by having a separate structure that's independent of the existing roofing. And that, another sort of minor thing there, but it reduces sale area because you, again, don't have this separate potential uplift element of the house. Next slide. So these are some photos. St. John's. We had to pick St. John's because I went to St. Joe's. So, but you just see from a construction point of view, this is a good example of a slate roof in the district, and again some construction renderings. Let's take a look at the next slide. I think this is even more important. That's a Tesla solar roof in Pasadena, recently installed, and then a metal tile roof in the north end. And I think these are, from the street, these are, obviously it's a new material, it's a different material, but visually and aesthetically, I think it's actually a better match than most materials you could use today, unless you were replicating exactly the historic material. Next slide. This is an example of a conventional PV system in the district on Warm Springs that, as I mentioned, under current code would be violating fire setbacks because it's brought all the way to the eaves and the gable end and the ridge. Certainly aesthetically is probably a little better by doing that. The other the other slide is Laguna Beach, California. A simple gable, very similar to the gardeners. That's a solar roof installed, and obviously it looks like a fairly traditional roof form. So just a couple examples of districts where solar roof has actually already been approved: Cambridge, Mass, South Pasadena, North Kingston, Rhode Island, Laguna Beach. Hopefully we can add the north end to that. But next slide. And then just some more contrasting examples. The first is the gardener's home. Couple images, and then another example of a new Tesla roof in a relatively similar roof form, different angle, just so you get a sense of street view and what the final appearance looks like. Like any tile material, the roof will pick up minor deviations in the structure and create, as Quinn kind of pointed out, that sort of architectural detail that I think we all sort of tend to pick up with our eyes. It doesn't have a perfectly uniform appearance, and it actually does a good job of visually matching traditional materials like slate and metal. I think that's next slide. Okay, I'm going to kick it back to Caitlin.
Thank you guys for hearing our presentation. The gardener's neighbors submitted a few different letters. If you'd like, I can read through them, or I can kind of just show you. Charlotte, do you want to say anything about? Yeah, okay. Chris, are you on?
So my husband's at work and he was trying to be on the call. He works for the city of Boise, by the way. So, I really didn't spend a lot of time preparing for this, but I did go around this weekend and just talk to my neighbors and told them what we were going to do. And they were all just absolutely thrilled about our motivation and about the opportunity to have this in our neighborhood. I think that I ended up with 4 letters, but I'm pretty sure I could end up with many, many more just by asking. So, our motivation here is, well, first of all, I've lived in the North End for over 26 years. I've lived in numerous historical homes, both contributing and not contributing. One of the reasons why you haven't seen me here before is because I don't change the facade of any of my homes. I always bring the homes back to their original historical significance, mostly on the inside though. So our motivation is not financial. I know that they said this is more affordable. I would beg to differ, but anyways, it is not, this is an investment for us. It's quite expensive. It's not for aesthetics either. Our investment is for the future of our earth. It's for the future of my children and your children, if you have them. Looking forward, we have to do something about our future. My son is here, he's 19, and he's one of the driving forces of this. I'm hoping he's going to come up and speak for just a minute. We'll see. So, our goal is to get off, as a family, is to get off of fossil fuels. Okay. And we're extremely committed. This is part of our commitment, is to do this moving forward. And my goal is really to make a difference in my community. Just speaking with other people about this, I've had several people say, oh, what a great idea. I'm going to look into that as well. And that's really my goal, is to make a difference and make a change in our neighborhood and in our community, in our state, and in our world. I do think that this has historical significance as far as architecturally. It's going to look very much like slate. It's going to look very much like a tin roof or a metal roof, which some of the only original roofs are the ones that we showed you in our presentation, and those are in the north and the east ends and in the historical districts, some of the original historical homes and buildings. So I hope you guys approve this. I would welcome any questions that you would have for us.
Does the commission have any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, I do have some questions.
Sure, Commissioner Weaver, please.
I have 3 questions actually for the applicant, and thank you for your presentation. It was very thorough, and I think it probably answered a few of these questions. I just want to confirm a few things. So you did show an example of at least one house in Boise that had the system on it, but I was curious how long ago that was installed on that particular house, and if not here right in Boise, do you know kind of maybe what the oldest installation of any of these this particular system is, even if it's not even in Idaho, I guess? Do you know the answer to that?
Sure, thank you. The one here in Boise has approximately been installed for a year, and there's been a couple of different levels of this product that Tesla's constantly improving on. I'd be speculating to say how long the oldest solar roof has been on, but Josh may be able to do some input on this, but I'm gonna say 4 to 5 years.
And what is the warranty or life expectancy, I guess, of this system?
This is Josh Powell again. So it's a 25-year warranty. Life expectancy, it's glass and metal. Tesla anticipates life expectancy, as Quinn pointed out earlier, sort of in the 30 to 40-year range. Argue that it's probably even longer. As Ms. Gardner pointed out, there's some of the historic homes in some cases still retain original roofing because of those materials and the analogous materials. I mean, glass, as you know, could potentially last 100 years. I mean, it's just a matter of the upkeep of the roof and obviously what kind of weather it deals with over its lifespan. But it's a very durable material meant to last a long time, which also reduces clearly the carbon cycle of our buildings. Back to how many have been out there. This is the 4th generation of Tesla solar roof. I think there's systems out there about 5 years now at the very oldest. We've installed 6 systems in Idaho, 1 in Boise, but several in the surrounding area in Treasure Valley and Sun Valley.
Okay. And can you clarify the sizes it comes in? Because I think, traditional slate is typically, I think, either 6 or 12 inches wide. I was just curious what the actual roof tile sizes come in.
We can bounce back to a slide that shows the dimensions, but it's roughly, I think, about 40 inches by 18 inches. The exposure, 45 inches by 15. The exposure is about 12 inches. Obviously, it's not exactly like slate, and that's why our point is, I would say, in look, this is actually a lot closer to a sectional embossed metal tile, which have a lot of variation. It also happens to look a little bit like a slate roof as well. I think it just depends on visual angle, but certainly if you're talking about how tight, how small individual pieces of slate are, I think it's actually closer to a embossed metal roof.
Okay, my very last question, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, is that I'm assuming, just based on the nature of this, there are no color options. It is just just the kind of color that it is.
So the current color is the color that's available. I'm aware that there's another color option that's probably coming to the market by the end of the year. We were incidentally one of the first Tesla integrators in the country to be certified to do this roof outside of Tesla. So we have, we've been watching the product for several years. We've been in the business of doing solar for over a decade. So they do have plans for that. I wouldn't want to, bet on exactly when. But my understanding is there's sort of a terracotta-ish color, or might even be closer, from what I've seen, closer to a Core 10 like look. But could match I would think from a historic perspective, maybe the closest match would be terracotta tiles of the period.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all that information. It's helpful.
Are there any other questions for the applicants?
I have a question for the applicant.
Sure, Commissioner Brown.
Looking at the information provided, it shows array 1 and array 2 on the garage, and then also the house of the roof, or sorry, the roof of the house. Is there a way just to put the roof on the garage and have enough energy to power what you need, or do you need to have it on the roof, the garage and the house?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not enough square footage on that garage to provide the PV necessary to do what they would like to do. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys so much.
Sorry if I may, Cody, right? Cody would like to speak. We didn't use all of our time.
Oh, sure.
Can he have a?
Yes, Victoria,
moment?
can you pull up
Thank
the
you.
allotment of time, please? Just state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is not Cody. It's Cullen Gardner, 1607 North 14th Street. And one of the main things I wanted to say was that I would hope that you guys approve our roof, because one of the main reasons that he said the staff wanted you guys to not approve it is that it wasn't similar to any roofs out there. And like they were saying, it's very similar to slate in its look. And I think overall, like roofing is not like the main appeal of a house or its overall facade. And like that this tempered glass roof doesn't change the overall look. And besides that, I think it'd be very good because it could inspire other people to hopefully get this roof, because it'll stop people from having to rely on power companies and to be able to provide themselves with energy and hopefully move towards getting away from fossil fuels. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gardner.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify?
Hi, good evening once again. Kate Henwood, 1116 North 12th Street. We would really like to commend the homeowners and for what they're trying to achieve here. We do fully support this project. Not only is this an acceptable alternative, but we find it infinitely preferable aesthetically to conventional solar powers. Further, we did look into the design guidelines and see that in section 4.3.16 suggests using building integrated photovoltaic, if I'm saying that right, technology, where the use of new building material is appropriate, and that they blend visually with the historic structures such that they remain subordinate in character to primary building materials. And this solar roof seems to fit the bill to a T. So we would love to see this application approved, and for more homes that are transitioning to solar power also adopt this technology.
Thank you so much, Ms. Henwood.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public tonight wishing to testify? It doesn't appear so. If the applicants would like, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal, or we can jump straight into a commission discussion and motion.
I don't think we have anything for rebuttal, but we did bring panels. I know you kind of saw them. If you're interested, we have some of the inert glass and also some of the metal flashing. So if you want to see that, I know for the commissioners joining us online, they can't see that very well from here, but if you would like to, we can share that as well.
Would anyone like to see the materials in person?
Or like feel it or touch it?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, with that, we will go ahead and close the public portion of the hearing. And before any motion discussion, or I'd like to just give my own thoughts. I think this is an incredible opportunity for our commission to approve a material that is the future. I 100% support this application, and I don't see a single reason to not. So I'm really interested to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say, but I will be supporting this application.
All right, I would like to echo your thoughts. I also like this application. I think of it as a case study for our commission. If it goes on, it looks horrible, then we know, but I think this is the future. We do need to start looking at alternative materials with the profile of this roof. I think it's going to look good. It's going to be fine. So
wonderful. It looks like I'm seeing a lot of nods from the rest of the commission. So if anyone else doesn't want to offer similar thoughts or has something else they'd like to add, please feel free, but I would love to entertain a motion at this point.
I do want to make one quick comment, and I support this motion, and I do like all the comments that have been said so far. My only hesitation really was the track record, I guess, of this product, and how it will perform in our city and our environment, since it is a new product. And I guess I like to suggest that the city maybe, and we've asked this of some of the other products that we've approved in the past, such as the artificial grass and things like that, that if they could potentially keep an eye on it, and maybe we revisit it in a couple of years once it's installed, assuming it gets approved, just to make sure that we are still okay with it, and that it could, maybe be integrated into our guidelines in the future. I just want to make sure that, it doesn't fade or something doesn't happen over time that causes it to not be a product that we would approve ongoing in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver. I totally agree. With that, would anyone like to make a motion?
I guess I will. I move to approve DRH 21-00130.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Maroney. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everyone. That concludes our hearing this evening. We will see you next month. Thank you all so much.